Yo, parish orphans and retrogrades. This morning, Monday, August the 26th, as promised, in this serial run of relic shows, beginning with the absolutely astonishing burial cloths of Christ. We did 2 shows in a row on last show, the Sudarium of Oviedo, the facial cloth, burial cloth of Jesus. And before that, the Shroud of Turin. Amazing, amazing relics that defy the imagination. Really, they don't defy science. Folks say that they defy science. They don't do that because science just says, yes, we confirm these things as miraculous. Then now they say it quietly, but it's not a defiance of modern science. It just says, yeah, we have no way of accounting for the shroud, no way of accounting for the face cloth, the Sudarium of Oviedo. Well, I promised you as I did those shows that the most astonishing relic that Christianity has to offer the world, the most astonishing piece of material evidence, article on earth of anything, is the TMA of Guadalupe. This is what a small version of it that we have up in our kitchen because of Mexican, right, Steph?
That's right. Amen.
Because of half Mexican. I mean, just because it's the most amazing thing, Mexican or not. Olay. It's just amazing. I'm going to break this out a few times, and we're going to get into specifics on today's episode. The TMA of Guadalupe dates to 1531, December the 12th, 1531. It's absolutely astonishing. I learned stuff. It's always been the most astonishing of all relics to me, but I learned some more aspects of it that are just even more unbelievable. And it just doesn't, like I said, it doesn't defy science. It doesn't defy philosophy. There's no violation of like the principle of the excluded middle. What it does is it defies the modern imagination. And by modern, I mean 16th and 17th century subsequent imagination. Because the Protestant Reformation and the Enlightenment made it virtually impossible for moderns and postmoderns in the 21st century to imagine that faith and reason aren't contraposed. Even if you're Catholic and you're like, well, my faith and my reason aren't contraposed. Pope John Paul II wrote this encyclical called Fides et Ratio, and it evinces a thoroughgoing concomitance throughout all of the history of Christendom, of the Christian intellect and the Christian, will, and the Christian faith. Not a contraposition. Okay, cool. You know that. But then even Catholics are tempted to say, well, but are they really like these magic-like Legend of Zelda relics that we have? And they'll always ask me, I got this question a bunch after I went on Noel's show last week, and after I did the first show, before I went on Noel's show here on Rules for Retrogrades, on the Shroud. Well, why doesn't everyone just believe them? Doesn't this leave no challenge for the faith? Well, yes. Pope Pius IX and Pope Leo XIII, both at the end of the 19th century, affirmed that the knowability of God, of one God, is fixed by the intellect. It has nothing to do with faith. So you've been hoodwinked by a modern Protestant and Enlightenment canard. The notion that faith is supposed to be some sort of challenge, epistemic challenge, that diminishes any degree of certitude you've ever had in the reality of Christ as the second person of the Trinity, or even that there's an existence of the first person of the Trinity or third. That's not what faith is. Jesus did signs to make his followers certain. Yeah, they were young of faith, like St. Paul says. That's why you do signs and miracles. But it doesn't mean it's bad, and it definitely doesn't mean that faith and reason should be contraposed. So yes, precisely. Parish orphans and retrogrades, faith and reason are absolutely concomitant. They're not contraposed to one another. And so while they're not many, there are a few magic items that for those who are young of faith, this really works wonders for. And it just puts me in a good mood to talk about the tilma, the sudarium, especially the tilma, but the shroud and some of the amazing relics that I once lived half a mile from in Rome. A couple of the nails that went into our Lord's hand, the INRI headboard, Doubting Thomas's finger. Those were all at Holy Cross over Jerusalem. My favorite of the 7 basilicas of Rome. So in today's show, I'm going to give you the whole count. I'm going to give you the whole count on why the TMA of Guadalupe should make anybody a believing, practicing Christian, at least, and one who loves the Theotokos. I mean, become Catholic, but at least don't become Christian and just stay at that kind of retarded entree of Protestantism. I mean, at the very least, become someone that loves the Theotokos, a Catholic or an Orthodox. Become Catholic today. And I'll give you so many good reasons. The shroud is the most amazing thing that I've ever seen. I've never been to Mexico City, obviously, because I'm sitting here still alive. I'm sorry, the tilma. If I'd gone to Mexico City, I would have been fallen upon, slaughtered, and eaten because it's like the most dangerous country on earth. But the tilma is absolutely amazing. Can we do, what picture do we have up now? It's like a picture of it's a picture of the picture that we have up in our kitchen. And I just want to start laying some facts on you. There were multiple apparitions. Unlike Fatima, unlike Lourdes, unlike Zatoun, Egypt, the apparitions that we're going to be talking about began almost day after day consecutive. December 9th, 1531, December 10th, 1531, December 11th, St. Juan Diego had like a sick relative, so he didn't go visit him. But the December 12th is the key date where he was given the tilma because he'd gone and picked roses, and she left him this unbelievable, miraculous image that has no elemental explanation for its colors. The colors aren't made of paint. The colors are not made of dye. The colors are not made of thread. There are no brush strokes. The colors are not even overlain on the substratum of the cactus cloth, which is what the tilma is. We're going to get all the detail in a second, but I just want to give you the overview. The overview is that if you view the real tilma, here's some of the big facts. If you view the real tilma from less than 10 inches away, the color disappears. It's holographic. Now, the color hovers 0.3 of a millimeter above the cactus cloth. And you can see this. If you go to the side, it's just hovers there. It's not elemental. It's not made of anything, not made of any vegetative byproduct, no animal byproduct. It's not made of an element. NASA's tested this thing. Nobel Prize winning chemists have tested this thing. I'm going to read all the names. I'm going to give you all the dates in today's show. But the point is, that color you're looking at, particularly this beautiful, I love green. It's my favorite color, and blue-green was always my other favorite color. Artists can't even reproduce this color of aquamarine. It's like a magic color. I thought this was part of the legendarium of the shroud. It's true. They can't reproduce this color that she's wearing. And it's not real color because there's not a platonic form of a color. A color's not a thing. There's not a red or a turquoise. Color is an accidental property that attaches to a substance. Well, here it's funny. It's just light. The color has wave properties, not particle properties, because if you look 0.3 of a millimeter above the shroud, it's hovering like a hologram, and it's not made of anything. And if you look at it from less than 10 inches, you can't see anything on the cloth. The stars that are around, surrounding Our Lady, of course, the image really is the image of a kind of mestizo version of Our Lady from Revelation, with the moon at her feet, stars as her crown. The stars are also all around her. And here you'll notice the constellations are precisely where they were. They're mostly the zodiac constellations, are precisely where they were on the night of December the 12th, 1531. Exactly. What happens is kind of like if you like Stranger Things, November 6th, 1983, got frozen in time when Will Byers went there. Everything involving the imagery of the shroud itself is like a frozen in time copy of December 12th, 1531. So when you look into her eyes, which look closed from back there, they're not closed. They're barely open. Just a sliver of her eyes are open. And the eyes have some of the properties that have astounded me to my core, shocked me to my core. Both of them reflect 13 characters. These are microscopic images. They didn't have computer technology then. And they have the triple characteristics of eyes. We'll go through what those are. And they reflect the people that were there as she gave the tilma to Juan Diego. Bishop Zumarraga and a family and a Spaniard with a heavy beard. And they're reflected at the exact trigonometric distance that they would, because one eye is usually closer to what they're both perceiving. Do you understand? So it's like if you watch Stranger Things, the Upside Down being frozen on November 6th, 1983, when Will went there. Our Lady froze the stars. You can see the stars around her shroud. They're in the exact constellation that was up at that exact time of the night on December 12th, 1531. And in her eyes, they didn't even know this for several years, is a reflection of all the people that were there as she presented this thing to Juan Diego. So it's like a relic of a relic. It's a self-referential relic. It's like an M.C. Escher painting, because it's a relic of what was happening as she made this apparition to St. Juan Diego and as she gave him this miraculous piece of cloth. It was supposed to decay after about 30 years. It hasn't done so. That's typical of, uncorruptibles and things like that. It's got a heartbeat. It's got a heartbeat. It's 98.6 degrees whenever they measure it. The eye, this is another thing with the eyes. The pupils dilate and contract when you shine light on them. There's so much more. We're going to go through it all systematically. Steph, you're showing the pictures of all the 13 people that are in her eyes. There's non-elemental color at a microscopic level in 1531 and at an astronomical level, reflecting the stars that are out that time of the night on December 12th, 1531. Things got a heartbeat. It's 98.6 degrees. The pupils dilate and expand. There's a lot more. And so what happens that I want you folks to consider before, I make some introductions and then get into the particulars, the nitty gritty, is that normies will say, the IQ 98s out there will say, well, why haven't I heard about this, man? I'm sure science debunks that. No, NASA's had a look at this thing, dozens of scientists, and the honest ones are like, wow, this is incredible. This is basically magic. That's all it is. And then the less than honest ones do whatever, like the kind of Joe Rogan thing. You're just at center at the beginning of every show. The kind of more right-wing guy convinces Joe during the course of his 8-hour show or whatever of something that should make Joe a more committed right-winger. And he's like, that's cool, man. And then just by the next show, he's just back at center again. Quotidian dementia. That's what normies do. And that's what normie scientists do. So they're like, okay, I studied that thing. I couldn't figure out. The color's not made of anything. Yeah, and it had a heartbeat and is 98.6 degrees. Oh, and Mary has living eyes. Our Lady of Guadalupe, Mary, has living eyes in it. The pupils expand and contract. It seems magic. But then they just go whatever, plug in for the night or whatever, power down the way normies do. They don't ever have a hard time sleeping. And they wake up the next morning and they're like, well, okay. And they're like, so did you like convert to Catholicism and go, venerate the Theotokos and say a bunch of Hail Marys? They're like, no. I don't believe in that stuff. You're like, well, what about the science you told us? And normie consumers of pop science like that are the same way. They're Joe Rogan. They're all just right at dead center. They might be convinced over the course of a conversation because they can't gainsay what they're hearing. They can't account for it, right? They can't justify their countervailing position. They can't gainsay it. They can't account for it by any of their pre-existent categories of kind of normie, I like Marvel comic book movie. I like eat Zog slop and go to bed and I watch whatever they watch and I just fall right asleep and I wake up in Normieville, Palookaville suburbs, USA. And then I go to my job and I kind of plug into my cubicle and I just don't really believe anything. And I just make fun of conservatives that are actually trying to conserve anything. But I say I'm kind of conservative. Whatever it is to be a normie, they don't. You can't do that with the TMA. You can't really do it with the Shroud of Turin either, but they'll just say, well, the 1988 carbon dating, that kind of, I don't know what they say. But the TMA is even more invulnerable to normieism because it's just like a living thing with a heartbeat and eyes, and all the scientists are like, yeah, that's just what it is. And if they're normie or leaning, me and my brother call them militant moderates in Rules for Retrogrades. The militant moderates can't account for this thing, but they just put it out of their mind. But when you bring it up with them, they're like, I'm sure modern science will disprove this or something. Like idiot Lawrence Krauss, the atheist's response in Robert Sungenis's documentary, The Principle, like idiot Lawrence Krauss's response to The Principle, which is Wolfgang Smith and others demonstrating that via the use of the cosmic microwave background radiation, that Earth and her solar system are at the smack dab center of the universe. Rebut it. And Krauss is like, well, I can't, but, I don't know, maybe you just, God of the gaps or whatever. Maybe someday we'll be able to rebut it. And they just don't move. It's the Joe Rogan experience. Oh, to be the mirthless laughter of the normie, the mirthless laughter of the damned. Same thing. You got to move where the information moves you, people. And that's what we're all about here on Rules for Retrogrades. This show is going to astound you if you're have some normie leanings. We're going to get to that in a second. But I want to socioculturally call you to an article, not the TMA of Guadalupe, that will astound you. And that is our forthcoming book, me and Steph's. It's my fifth, it's her second, called Leave and Cleave, 9 Marriage Prep Secrets Once Taught, now Censored. That book is on pre-order today. Go to timothyjgordon.com. We're selling tons of copies of it. It's basically the textbook for the class that begins on September the 11th. It should arrive to your door. If you pre-order today, you'll get a signed copy, by the way. For that first class of 9, one class per chapter of the book, on how to actually have a happy patriarchal household with lots of intimacy, lots of fun, lots of closeness, lots of sex, lots of training of the youths, and hopefully lots of plenary amounts of sanctifying grace or at least encouragement to get to the sacraments, where you're raising your kids in one of the, the 1 out of 100, 1 out of 500 non-gender dysphoric households. We convinced you with our last 2 books, Case for Patriarchy and Ask Your Husband, of the theoretical account of the patriarchy. That took the Catholic world by storm the last 5 years. We took lots of shrapnel in the face. But now that a lot of people are convinced of it, they need to know how to do the patriarchy. That's what this book is specific in 9 lessons. And that's what the class is. Buy the book and the class on timothyjgordon.com. They're both available for what amounts to pre-order. And they both really have a pub date of September 11th, the date of the first class. It all makes sense. So much sense. Dig patriarchy. We show you how. If you want to support this channel, like, subscribe, click the notification bell. We're flying towards 100K now. Had a little bit of a sticky spot. Got stuck at 51,000 for a little bit. But now we're rolling. And if you want to support the channel, please do so on Locals and Subscribestar. I've been kicked off of Patreon, been kicked off of everywhere else. Want to make it to 100K on YouTube before we get kicked off of here, just to reach the goal that every YouTuber has, 100K. Help us reach that goal. Subscribe, support the channel. If you want to support young Abby, lots of people write me and ask about this. That's donative. That's different from Locals or Subscribestar. It's a totally different proposition. Go to timothyjgordon.com and click donate, or you can use the P.O. box there. Now, real estate for life is how you support yourself. Get out of your blue state, get to a red state. Today, realestateforlife.org. So I'm just going to jump into this thing. I mentioned the stars on Our Lady's mantle, Our Lady of Guadalupe. See, when I talk about this mantle, I'm talking about this amazing, unique, utterly unique color of aquamarine. I don't understand it. I don't understand how one can't just, it is an amazingly unique color of aquamarine. Dark yet light. There are stars around here. Can we show? Yeah, you can see there are just stars in the mantle. I didn't quite understand it when people would explain this to me before, but the stars on this unique color of aquamarine that can't be reproduced for whatever reason. The stars correspond with the major zodiac signs as they would have appeared on December 12, 1531. I'll cite the main documents that I'm working from today at the end. The perspective is as if you're looking from behind the sky to Earth, like heaven looking down on Earth. The pattern of the stars would place the constellation Corona Borealis, a crown on her forehead. That's not a zodiac. That's a minor constellation. Virgo over her heart. And Leo the lion, a.k.a. the Lion of Judah, our Lord, over her womb. That's a base title. I always forget about the Lion of Judah thing. Over her womb. So that's what these are around the aquamarine part of the tilma. They're stars exactly in the constellations as they would have appeared at that time of the night on December 12th, 1531. The tilma can't be recreated. There are no animal, vegetative, or mineral pigments on it. It's non-elemental. These would have been present had the image of the tilma been painted or something or colored. There are no underdrawings, brushstrokes on the image. The pigments that were available in the time and in that area would have faded by now. The image hasn't faded. We're going to go into greater detail in a second on that. There was a skeptic who was an artist in the 1750s, which after all was many years, many centuries after this thing appeared in the 1530s, in Mexico City, who did an exact recreation of the tilma, and he thought he could account for it. I'm just going to do one, and it'll be uncorrupted too. You're guessing where this is going. This isn't the most amazing thing. It just vindicates it. Going so far as to even encase it in the same type of glass case as the tilma was at that point. He kept it in the same environment, exposed it to the same conditions as the original tilma. Within 7 years, this cactus cloth, I'm going to tell you exactly what cactus cloth is. His recreation was so badly decayed and rotted that it was removed from public display. And I guess he just left the field in shame like Shoeless Joe Jackson or something. You just, okay. With all the hubris in the world, cocksure, proud, the way skeptics always are, said like, I'm going to disprove this thing, and he just couldn't. You can't recreate it. Okay, I'm going to go into the eyes, but I'm trying to think of where to start. There's so much unimaginably, unfathomably unpredictable bonus basedness of this thing that it's a little bit harder than even the Shroud of Turin to explicate, because it's so amazing, and I want to do the best job. Yeah, go ahead, Steffi. Yeah, Steph's been studying this thing for the last couple of days too, and it's just. I'm going to go through what the fabric is first, but you say what you want to say.
I was going to say on the fabric point, what's interesting about it, which I found was really, really startling, was that it's actually two pieces. There's a seam right down the middle of the tilma, because remember, this was an article of clothing that was worn. You know, it was sewn. So what's interesting is that not only has it not deteriorated, they say this sort of fabric would have deteriorated within like 10 years or so if, you know, it wasn't a miraculous image. The fact that it's been around for 500 years is quite interesting, but also interesting is that it's two pieces that are sewn together with a flimsy little cotton thread, and it's still holding very strong. So that's, to me, that's really something.
Yeah. I mean, again, you sew, you do all kinds of stitchcraft, so that really struck you, and I'm like, well, that's one of those things that defies the imagination slightly less, but it's a single stitch, right? A single stitch, or single sewing. What do you call that? A single seam. That's unimaginably impossible without the kind of supernatural forces that are clearly at play here. And so it's 500 years old in like 7 years. So 2031 will be the 500-year anniversary birthday of it. And maybe for that 5th centenary, maybe we'll be old enough, right? We'll risk it. There's like, if you go that far south into Mexico, it's like an 85% chance you're going to be like fallen upon by bandits and killed, and your face sewn to a soccer ball. So maybe that's what we'll do to celebrate. Well, to celebrate the 5th centenary of this thing, we'll take the 80% chance of going into like the worst country in the world and having our end up with our faces sewn to a soccer ball because the cartels run the country. No, seriously, I'd love to see it someday, and I have close friends that have seen it in person. The image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, I'm just quoting from this PDF at this point. It's been the subject of numerous technical studies since 1751. They started doubting it in 1751 after 220 years. And extensive scientific investigations in recent years. And none of the result offered any sound scientific explanation, which up to this very day defies science and all human reasoning as it continues to baffle scientists and even skeptics. Again, I don't like this phraseology. It's accountable because it's like celestial object from the Theotokos herself, the Mother of God. And that doesn't defy all explanation. It defies all physicalist, reductionist, determinist explanations. That's it. But, science can't contradict science. Truth can't contradict truth, to quote the common doctor, Thomas. So it's not that it defies all explanation. It just defies dumbass scientism. That's all. And it defies sort of Protestant and Enlightenment modernist expectations that there are no magical type items. Well, there are. It's the Legend of Zelda. Don't be a dumbass normie. It's the Legend of Zelda. There are a few of these things. We talked about the Shroud already. You people can't go back to sleep. Okay, so let's talk about the fabric itself. The tilma is a kind of cloak worn by native Mexicans. It's Juan Diego's property, or it was Juan Diego's property, Saint Diego, which is what San Diego translates as. That's what San Diego means, is Saint Diego, that bears the miraculous image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and is made of a coarse fabric, which itself is constituted by threads of the maguey cactus fiber, which usually lasts no more than 20 or 30 years, 30 outside. Steph said 10. It's 10 to 30 years. And yet the fabric has maintained its structural integrity without cracking even a little, without even fading a little, or any sign of deterioration for, 493 years. It consists of two pieces of coarse cloth fibers of about 1.7 by 1.05 meters, held together in the center by a seam of thread, made of the same material, and is typical of cloaks used by the Nahuas in the 15th and 16th century called ayates. The seam is visible up the middle of the figure, turning aside from the face. Now, this is the single seam that Steph was talking about, that she, as a stitches woman, was impressed by. Just a single wimpy seam that's held it together. And it's a large thing for nearly 500 years.
I mean, just to give some context to some men out there that don't understand, like, the sewing process, I have to reinforce. I make a dress. I have to reinforce a seam several times just to make sure, just from wear and tear, that it's not coming apart. And so the fact that this thing is held together with the materials it's comprised of with a seam for that long is just quite astonishing.
Yes. Yeah, it's the more I think about it, the more it is astonishing. So here, I was looking at Larry Chapp's normie response to yesterday being Ephesians 5 Sunday. There's always so much going on because we've been doing this relics craze, and I have to take a pause and tell you guys, it puts me in such a good mood. Doing the shroud show and the headcloth sudarium show, and getting to talk about it a couple different days last week, doing what I do, it just puts me in this titillated mood. Yeah, like excited. It's just exciting to be not talking about the negative stuff. And same thing with even the writing of our book, where it's like, this is the way. I hate that Disney coined that. This is the way. Yeah. Everyone knows the Pope is like this weird, evil guy. No one knows exactly what the hermeneutic of number 266 will end up being. It annoys me when people pretend to know. Prophets of doom that are certain, like they're certain they know what the after account, the subsequent narrative, the meta narrative of Pope Francis will be. No one does. He is, but you can know in real time. He's this weird, evil guy. Okay. And I've done a lot of shows on him. And I've told you throughout the last year and a half, I'm sick of doing these. Now, in October, I'm going to be covering the Synod, and it's going to be the weird, evil machinations of a weird, evil guy and his weird, evil court of counselors. Got to do that. But in the meanwhile, here's how to do patriarchy. You can bring it back without your bishop's permission. Here's how to really, really be a non-modernist Christian. By that, I mean a Protestant. This is how, and this is very inclusive, very ecumenical of Orthodox, because they love Mary and they have a 2,000-year-old version of Christianity as well. Unlike the Protestants, sorry guys, your religion's 500 years old and it's man-made. I mean, that's good, great. You believe in the Trinity. You have a Trinitarian baptism, but Catholics and Orthodox are like, look, we believe in magic. We believe in the 7 sacraments. We believe that bishops have this kind of ontological ordering toward being able to partake in I don't care what you call it, the magic of the sacraments, particularly the greatest of the sacraments toward which they are all oriented, the Eucharist. And then we believe in relics. We believe, like I was joking the other day, if like a really saintly guy dies, someone's like, Catholics are in the immediate vicinity. They're like, steal that corpse's toe. I want that. I'm going to wear that on a chain. It's fucking sick. It's cool. Like, that's what we do. Like, hey, get his fingernail clippings. I want to put those in a little bag, like a little magic sack.
It's very metal.
It's very metal. Catholics are very metal. Like, look, we're blessed enough to have a relic of St. Mark up like in our dining area. First order relic of St. Mark the Evangelist. It's very, very metal. It's like part of his like corpse. And we're eating. We're preparing food within 6 or 7 feet of this thing. And because we're Catholics, we're like, this is based. Like, here, cut up that corpse. I want part of him. It's so dope. It's awesome. Because corpses, if they're saints, are magic, right? And more than just the other saints, the Queen of the Saints has left a few items, and her son, the Lion of Judah, has left some magic items. And they're so magic that they astound normies, because normies are just like, well, I'm sure like I was watching Jon Stewart and other Zog programming, and they just make jokes and look at the screen like Jim Halpert if they talk about like Catholic beliefs. But they never produce any evidence. All the evidence is here, and that's what we're doing this show for. To get you off your narcotized suburban normie Zog sleep. To wake you up, to awaken you from your dogmatic slumbers. Which I hate even using that expression because Kant said it about David Hume. But nevertheless, the point is you need to be awoken from your dogmatic slumbers. Well, no, a lot of you don't. A lot of you are already up earlier than me. A lot of you are up earlier than me that listen to me. So I'm not holier than thou. A lot of people in my audience like have faster prayer routines and more devotions, and been doing this for longer. When I was some secular guy in the 90s and early 2000s, I get it. I'm just saying, for those of you out there that need to hear it, you need to hear it. Okay, so back to what the actual tilma is made of. It was exposed for centuries to all the rigors of all the natural elements without any kind of protection against infrared, ultraviolet radiations, from tens of thousands of candles being burned near it, humid condition, dusty condition, salty condition around the basilica there in Mexico City. Despite the constant contact of hands and kisses of thousands of pilgrims who venerated the image, and the continuous manual handling of the tilma, including the many different objects that touched it during the countless times it was subjected to scientific examinations. We're going to get to that promptly. The tilma remained in a state of perfect condition. No explanation was offered by scientists as to why the tilma is repellent to insects and dust. Another cool little property of it. In 1789, Dr. Jose Ignacio Bartolash had 2 copies of the image painted on an identical piece of magui cloth using the best techniques of that time. He placed them in the same salty and humid environment. I told you this in broader terms a little bit ago. After several decades, the 2 replicas disintegrated. An attempt to embellish, this is hilarious. They tried to embellish the tilma, which, why would you do this? Which also proved futile. So they added some features to it. This is so tacky. But it has demonstrative effects in terms of it renders all the more palatable to us, all the more compelling to us, the idea that the real heaven-sent tilma itself, with its original appearance, is incorruptible. Because they added a crown, where they painted a crown on Our Lady's head and angels in the clouds. But unlike the tilma, these additions, these tacky additions, have faded away and are no longer visible. The rays of the sun, for example, were coated with gold and moon plated with silver, but the embellishments wore away. That's what happens with time and the elements. Decay. In fact, the silver-plated moon turned black. In August of 2009, researcher and physicist Dr. Adolfo Orozco told participants at the International Marian Congress on Our Lady of Guadalupe in Glendale, Arizona, that there is no scientific explanation for at that point, it was 478 years of high quality preservation of the tilma. One of the most bizarre characteristics of the cloth is that the backside is rough and coarse, but the front side is as soft as the most pure silk. Painters and scientists first noted this in the year 1666, confirmed 1 century later in 1751 by this Mexican painter Miguel Cabrera. To the eye, it suggested a coarse weave of palm threads called pita, or the rough fiber called coutances, or a hemp and linen mixture, which is called, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's an agave fiber. An analysis of the fibers in 1946 concluded the fibers came from the agave plant. However, researchers could not figure out which of the 175 agave species it was made from. Who cares, right? But so the image of Our Lady herself, this is really gnarly. There's no explanation offered by the NASA scientists who looked at the image of Our Lady herself on how it was imprinted on the tilma, because the color is all non-elemental. There are no brush strokes, no sketch marks on it. It's just magic color that hovers above the cactus cloth itself. The image also seems to increase in size and change colors slightly owing to an unknown property of the surface and substance of which it is made. They just can't figure it out. The colors actually float above the surface of the tilma at a distance of 0.3 of a millimeter, or about 1/100th of an inch, without touching it. When examined less than 10 inches of the image away, one can see the McGuee cloth only. The colors totally disappear. So this is known as iridescence or holographicness. In 1936, the biochemist Richard Kuhn, a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, analyzed a sample of the fabric and ascertained that the pigments were used from no known source, whether natural, animal, mineral, or vegetable. On May 7th, 1979, Americans Dr. Philip Serna Callahan, biophysicist at the University of Florida, expert in infrared photography, and Jody B. Smith, professor of aesthetics and philosophy at Pensacola College, who both specialize in painting and are both members of NASA, photographed the image under infrared light and scanned at very high resolutions. After filtering and processing the digitized images to eliminate noise, statistical irrelevancies, and which is, they don't define it, but that's what it is, and enhance them, they discovered that portions of the face, hands, robe, and mantle had been painted in one step. Well, I mean, this document kind of contradicts itself. There is no paint on it, but had been created in one step without brush strokes. But it's not paint. They're sticking to that story. It just wasn't written so cleverly. No sketches, no corrections, no visible brush strokes, no sizing used to render the surface smooth, no protective varnish covering the image to protect its surface. The image changes in color slightly according to the angle of viewing, which, as I said before, is a phenomenon known as iridescence. It's holographic. It's a technique that cannot be reproduced with human hands. Human hands did not make this thing. So it has to have just been lightning struck a tree or something, and you get a magic baseball bat out of it, like the natural. So it's not an artifact made by human hands. It's a natural item. It's just got to be coincidental that it looks exactly like Our Lady. But obviously, we're going to get to that. It's created by something intelligent. Scientists were unable to find any trace of paint, residue, dye of any sort. I know this is a little bit redundant at times. Yet the colors maintained their luminosity and brilliance. What produced the colors on Juan Diego's cloak, how they're applied, remains a total mystery. What produced, the quality of the pigments used for the pink dress, the blue veil, it's really kind of aquamarine veil, the face and the hands, the permanence of the colors, the vividness of the colors after several centuries during which they ordinarily should have deteriorated, they're saying defy all scientific reasoning. The image still retains its original colors despite being unprotected by any covering during the first 100 years of exposure. The bluish-green color of Our Lady's mantle is utterly unique. It seems to be made of an unearthly shade that, as yet, no artist has been able to duplicate. Now, that doesn't mean they can't. If you duplicate the aquamarine of Our Lady's tilma shroud, that doesn't mean that the thing is debunked. That's just a nice little property of it. And it's amazing, amazing blue-green color. Moreover, scientists argued that a painter would be incredibly foolish to choose an Indian's tilma to work on, and even more to paint right over the center seam of the cloak. But it's not paint, so I don't know why they keep returning to this. They verified it's not paint, it's not elemental at all. And had the Virgin not turned ever so slightly to the right, the stitch would have divided her face. Just as astonishing is the fact that only the seam still holds the tilma together, which Steph is just astonished by that. She wants to say more about this seam.
Also, just on the
Here
face.
she goes.
Here I go. Also on the face tilt, which I found was really interesting. Initially in my research, I had read that her face, the angle in which she's looking is the exact axis in which the Earth is tilted. And I thought, oh, well, I mean, maybe that's just kind of a coincidence. But also later, when we're talking about the astrological evidence and information.
Astronomical evidence. We don't believe in astrology.
Astronomical, sorry. Yeah, it's interesting that she has all the stars and all of the constellations, and then on top of that, her head is actually tilted. What is it? 25.3 degrees.
23.5.
23.5 degrees, and that's exactly how the Earth is tilted.
Yeah,
kind of
cool.
an interesting combination of
It's like
space facts.
It is space facts, astronomy, not astrology. Yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, that doesn't prove that it's supernatural. The other 20 things prove that, but there are just cool little properties like the axial tilt, matching the axial tilt of the Earth by her head. They are quick to point out the law of gravity doesn't allow a single flimsy cotton thread to bind two very heavy materials of cloth for more than 10 years, much less 500. In addition, the coarse weave of the tilma was utilized in such a precise manner as to give depth to the faith of the image. I just thought of a good way that midwits convince nitwits that like this kind of thing is fake. So what they'll do, because I've been saying it's 500 years old, right? This is what they'll say. They'd say something like a midwit, like a Jon Stewart or some Zog programming like that, would say, Timothy Gordon claimed that the tilma's 500 years old. This is a lie. It's less. And then people would be like, oh, debunked. I'm rounding up. It's 493 years old. That's the kind of stuff you guys don't know that you can lie with the truth. So this is from 1531, and so it'll technically only be 493 years old on December 12th. But if I round up and I say, man, this thing's 500 years old, the midwits who run your Zog programming schedule will say, oh, Timothy Gordon claimed it was 500 years old. This is utterly untrue, and we proved it here, here, and here. He's just lying. The tilma's fake. And morons, because someone's on TV, will be like, oh, yeah, I looked it up. It's not 500 years. And they don't... I'm rounding up. I'm rounding up, idiots. But like it literally is, that's all they can do. That's all they've done with something like the Shroud of Turin or the tilma. They'll take something like that and they'll be like, that myth is busted. It's not 500 years. And they don't explain the relevance because they're using a truth. It is 493 years old in December, not 500. I'm just rounding up because doing shows like this involves a lot of tongue tying and lots of words. So you round up and they'll say he lied. And then you guys don't know what it's like to do this until you do it. And then dummies in your comments who didn't even watch the video. This happened in Knowles' audience. They're like, it's just fake. All right. And then it gets like, 50 likes. And you're like, I just proved that it's real. But dummies are like, no, man, you said 500 and it's 492.9. So that's just a good example, I think. I don't know, says I, of the kind of nitwit programming by midwits, which is what turns the world round. What makes the world go?
You're mentioning that because we were kind of having a conversation here in chat just a little while ago. People were having a hard time with your use of magic. I'd like they say use miraculous instead of magic. It's funny, magic. People don't understand like what the definition of words are. So I'll point everybody to that. Magic, the power of apparently influencing the course of events by using mysterious or supernatural forces. It also means wonderful and exciting.
Yeah, which if you don't think, oh, look, listen to me right now. You're watching this because it's wonderful and exciting and influencing natural events through mysterious means. If you don't think so, then turn this program off right now. Otherwise, you know how we do on Rules for Retrogrades. Don't say what to say. You say it yourself that way, right? This is a major problem that, 6 years ago when I hit the scenes, I started having with the kinds of otherwise good Catholics that watch good programming, like, trad stuff on the TLM or Pope Francis or Vatican II or the relics or the whatever, it's not calling Mafia. We like the same stuff. We love the faith, the one true faith, because we're smart enough all to have, through the grace of God, received true belief, true religion, the one true faith. But yeah. Don't say mysterious. Don't say magic. Say that, get your own show and do it that way. This is magic. All right. So next, the law of gravity, of course, doesn't allow this single flimsy cotton thread to bind to heavier materials of cloth for more than 10 years, much less 493 in December. In addition, the coarse weave of the tilma was utilized in such a precise manner as to give depth to the face of the image. We got to get to the eyes. The eyes are unreal. But first, the Kodak Corporation in Mexico has sent some specialists out, and they said that the image is smooth and bears more resemblance to a color photograph than anything else. It's more than a painting or a sketch. It's more like a color photograph, still not very much like it. But they said it's got the most properties like our Kodak color photographs because it's consistently defied exact reproduction, brush, camera, whatever. It simply can't be done with earthly expedients. IENTS, not ENCE. All who have scientifically examined the specific image of Our Lady over the centuries confess that its properties are absolutely unique, unearthly, so inexplicable in human terms that the image can only be supernatural. That's what they all say. Our Lady's height in the image measures 4 feet 8 inches tall, so she'd be tall for a mestiza of southern Mexico, from head to toe, and is represented as a young woman of 18 to 20 years old. The face is that of a mestiza, a mixture of Spanish and Indian's race brought about by intermarriage. Doctors Callahan and Smith further discovered that the tilma maintains a constant temperature of between 36.6 and 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 Fahrenheit average. Carlos Fernandez del Castillo, a gynecologist, examined the image and determined that the gynecological measurements of Our Lady's physical dimensions indicated a woman who is pregnant, entirely consistent with the stage of pregnancy on December 9th, for Jesus' birth to occur on December 25th. So she's basically 37 and a half weeks pregnant.
And it's interesting, too, if you look at the image where her belt is, like any woman who's been pregnant knows that would be naturally where your waist kind of goes up. Your natural waistline goes up when you're even just a little bit pregnant. You wouldn't be able to have like a belt really, truly at your waistline. So when I read that in the document and I re-looked at the image, I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's definitely higher up where the belt is, which makes sense.
Yeah, like with guys, when they get fat, the belt comes down like your plumber. You see half his crack. With women, when they get pregnant, the belt comes up. I don't know why. It's just God made us differently. This Carlos Fernandez del Castillo placed a stethoscope below the black band at the waist of Our Lady, a sign that she's pregnant, and heard rhythmic, repeating heartbeats at 115 beats per minute, the same as that of a baby in the maternal womb. Read some sites trying to debunk this. They did a very bad job because he recounted this so specifically, 115 beats per minute. On December 22nd, 1981, at the Observatory La Place, Mexico City, Father Mario Rojas and Dr. Juan Hernandez Illescas, a medical doctor and amateur astronomer, performed an astronomical study of the image and analyzed the stellar arrangement that appear in the mantle of Our Lady. Could we go to that pic, Stevie? That one there. Yeah, thank you. They surprisingly discovered that the stars stunningly and accurately map out the various constellation of the Mexican sky. Even more remarkable is the star map on the mantle is in the reverse. The cardinal axis rotated 90 degrees counterclockwise, providing a view of the constellations from beyond them, as they would be seen looking through them toward the Earth. So you're seeing two layers of space at once, in other words, or multiple layers of space, more than two. The constellations are consistent with what astronomers believe was in the sky above Mexico City on the day the apparition occurred, in the winter morning solstice of December 12th, 1531, at 10:26 a.m. I don't know why 10:26 a.m. is it, but that's what they can do. They can do real science. It's not all ZOG. Our Lady's cloak has 46 stars, 22 on her right side, 24 on her left side. These 46 stars are the most brilliant stars that surround the horizon of the Mexican Valley. Most of them are zodiac stars, the zodiac constellation stars. The main constellations of the northern sky can be seen on the right of the mantle. On the left, the southern ones, which can be seen from the Tepeyac in winter at dawn. I didn't know that southern constellation stars could be seen north of the equator. I mean, I don't understand that. I confess. Like, you're not going to go see Alpha Centauri unless you're in Australia. I don't understand what they're saying here. The east is situated. If someone understands, throw it into the comment, the chat. The east is situated in the upper part, and the west in the lower part. The mantle is opened, and there are other groups of stars which are not marked in the image, but they are present in the sky. The boreal crown is located above the Virgin's head. Virgo is in her chest, associating itself with her heart, with her identity, in the region of her hands. Leo on her womb. That's really, really cool. Our Lord. Precisely above the sign of Nahui Olin, with its main star, Regulo, the small king Gemini, the twins, is found in the region of the knees. Orion is located where the angel is. It has also been found that by imposing a topographical map of central Mexico on Our Lady's dress, the mountains, rivers, and principal lakes coincide with the decoration of the dress, which is quite cool. But I don't know exactly what it means. I mean, the zodiac constellations being precise to December 12th, 1531 is quite, and that's a very, very easy astronomy to do. And it's precise, right? These stars here are the stars are in the beautiful aquamarine. You can't really see them there, but you can see it a little better in the picture with the TMA expert standing next to her. You can see that they're like golden stars. What were you going to say, Stevie?
The map that you were talking about on the actual dress of Our Lady, there's like a pattern, or I believe there's like some decorative lines or something there, and I think that's what they're talking about, correspond to the
topological stuff.
Topological stuff, yes.
It's all dope. Now, to get to Our Lady's eyes, you probably are looking at it from further away. There we go. Thank you. It looks like they're closed, but they're open a little bit. And scientists from the NASA Research Center have conducted extensive tests on the fabric image, have discovered no scientific explanation. You know all that, particularly on the eyes. Digital enlargements of the image were made, and it was discovered that the reflection of Bishop Juan de Zumarraga looking in astonishment in the reflection of Our Lady's eyes, just little slivers of her eyes were made, and it was discovered that the reflection of Bishop Zumarraga could clearly be seen in the pupil of her eyes, Our Lady's eyes. Further study of the photographic enlargements and rigorous investigation of Our Lady's eyes, only about a 1/3 inch in size, have revealed not only the minuscule human image of a bearded man, the Spaniard, clearly identifiable in the eyes that no artist could have painted because they're so small. Also, it's not made of paint. They keep missing that. Yeah, they're too small to paint, but also it's not paint. But all the optical imaging qualities of a normal human eye, such as light reflection, image positioning, and distortion on the cornea, which are impossible to obtain on a flat surface. So we're going to talk about the triple characteristic of the eyes: light reflection, image positioning, distortion on the cornea. When the eye of Our Lady is exposed to light, the retina contracts. When the light's withdrawn, it returns to a dilated state, just as happens with a living eye. I mean, it's like, do we need to keep going? This is just absolutely miraculous. Our Lady's eyes have been ophthalmologically determined to be alive. So she has living eyes, basically, on the tilma. In 1929, Alfonso Gonzalez, the basilica's official photographer, this is really cool, took black and white photographs of the image, and after careful examination of the photographic negative, found a clear image of a bearded man, the Spaniard, reflected in the right eye of the Virgin. He immediately informed the authorities of the basilica, who swore him to complete silence about the discovery, which allegedly he complied. More than 20 years later, on May 29, 1951, Jose Carlos Salinas Chavez, while examining a good photograph of the face, rediscovers the same image of that bearded man reflected in the right eye again of the Virgin, in the same place which it could be projected in an alive eye, because, again, these eyes are basically living. Since then, many people had the opportunity to examine closely the eyes of the Virgin on the tilma, including more than 20 physicians, specifically ophthalmologists. The first one who was going to see the bearded Spaniard again appearing in the right eye. We were telling our kids this yesterday, and they were like, they didn't understand. The twins didn't understand. We were saying there are people in the eyes, and they're like, they're little people crawling in to her eye? That sounds violent. We're like, no, like a reflection in the eye. Look at my eye. You can see your own reflection, sweetheart. Sweetie, no. Sweet spring child. The first one was on March the 27th, 1956. Dr. Javier Torruella Bueno, MDS, a prestigious ophthalmologist, discovered the presence of the triple reflection called the Sampson Purkinje effect in the eyes of the Virgin. The triple reflection, a characteristic of all live human eyes wherein the images are located exactly where they're supposed to be according to such effect, the triple effect, and also that the distortion of the images agree with the curvature of the cornea. This would be, it's impossible to paint if there's no paint on the image, which there's not, but it would also basically be, even if there were paint on the image, impossible to reproduce, particularly in 1531 when most of these people still wiped with their right hand. You know, this just can't be done. In July of that year, another noted ophthalmologist, Dr. Raphael Torrija Lavigny, similarly examined the eyes of the image with an ophthalmoscope in great detail and discovered that the eyes have the three refractive characteristics of a human eye. Again, so they're all saying it comes down to these three refractive characteristics that only living human eyes have. Shouldn't be hard to prove because a painted or a paper eye does not dilate. That's not normal behavior in you don't typically see that in household appliances or whatever they say in Ghostbusters. He also found a human figure in the corneas of both eyes with the location and distortion of a normal human eye, and specifically noted a unique appearance of the eyes. They look strangely alive when examined. Well, yes. By 1776, some 20 doctors had confirmed, orally and in writing, the unexplainable presence of the bearded man in the cornea and lenses of the Virgin's eyes. In 1979, Dr. Jose Aste Tonsman, PhD, a Peruvian ophthalmologist and an expert at IBM in digital processing of images, who for over 20 years studied the tilma, digitally enlarged the image of Our Lady's eyes by 2,500 times the actual size under extremely high resolution, and found not only a single figure, the bearded Spaniard, but images of all the witnesses present when the tilma was first revealed before Bishop Zumarraga in 1531. It's the kind of Stranger Things theory, remember? The upside down is frozen on November 6, 1983. The tilma is an image that's frozen on December 12th, 1531. And it ends up being 13 persons in all. The bishop, Juan Diego, plus a small family group, a mother-father group of children. In the center of Our Lady's eyes, 13 persons in all. The size of that scene is about 1/100th of an inch. painted without paint, created without any creation, non-elemental color that hovers 1/100th of an inch, and they painted 13 people. The iris of the eye magnified, and through mathematical and optical procedures, Dr. Tonsman, PhD, was able to identify highly detailed images of at least 13 people imprinted in the eyes who are all present in each eye at a slightly different angle. The Indian, Bishop Zumarraga, the translator, Juan Diego showing the tilma, and below said images, the family with mother, father, and children. But different in proportions, as would happen when human eyes reflect the objects before them. One eye's a little closer. You're not triangulating equidistantly with lots of images. This box light right here is a little closer to my right eye. Steph's a little closer to my left eye. There are two scenes. First contains Bishop Zumarraga gawking at Juan Diego, opening his tilma, letting the roses spill out, and seeing this miraculous image. The second scene, much smaller than the previous one, is located in the center of the eye and contains a typical family picture of Native Americans, a couple with several children around. The two scenes are repeated in both eyes with amazing accuracy, including the size difference caused by the greater proximity of one eye than the other against the objects portrayed. Dr. Tonsman used digital technology similar to that used in the images received from satellites and space probes in transmitting visual information. The image of Bishop Zumarraga in the eyes of Our Lady was also digitally enlarged by 1,000 times compared to the actual size to be able to see what is reflected. The eye of the bishop contains the image of Juan Diego opening his tilma before the bishop. So this is in the eye of Mary, a reflection in the eye of Bishop Zumarraga, reflecting Juan Diego opening his tilma. The size of this reflected reflection, 1/4 of a micron, which is 1/4 of a millionth of a millimeter. That must be fake though, right? So this is just so you're clear, parish orphans, retrogrades. What you see when you blow this thing up is a reflection in Our Lady's eye of a reflection in Bishop Zumarraga's eye of Juan Diego opening his tilma, letting the flowers spill out before the bishop. And the size of this double reflected image, 1/4 of a micron, which is 1/4 of a millionth of a millimeter. And I'll repeat that the only materialist reductionism that would account for this is that it was, just like a cloud that looks like Jebediah Springfield or something. Embiggens the smallest man. It's a cromulent word. Like a cloud that looks like Jebediah Springfield is just a natural phenomenon. It wasn't created by anyone. That's what they have to say. Like morons, the determinists have to say, well, okay, so this perfect image of Our Lady, but with all of these magical properties, and it's got in her eyes are these reflections of real men who are really there. That just has to have been like lightning struck a cactus cloth and gave it this property and gave it color, and the color is, it's the same way clouds can kind of look like things. It's so retarded. It's so ridiculous. It's so intellectually impoverished. And yet this is what midwits and nitwits together are like. I guess that's all it is. For some reason, in the postmodern era, to believe just your own lying eyes, to believe your own eyes, you have to be like smarter than a nitwit or a midwit. Whereas that's not how it was for most of human history. Before faith and reason were contraposed against each other by the Enlightenment and the Reformation, people were just like, oh, looks like a magic cactus cloth. That's probably WTH it is. That's what it is a magic cactus cloth. Not everything. There aren't that many of these like magical items, but there are some. If you believe in God, why would there not be some Legend of Zelda magical type item? That's how I want you guys to talk. You can't say, oh, I believe in God, I believe in Jesus, I believe the Gospels, And then like a Protestant be like, but I mean, you just have to believe the words of the Bible alone. You shouldn't expect to find like a consecrated host that has the body, blood, soul, divinity of Jesus, or like a magic cactus cloth. What?
Or the entire city Christ was born
in. Yeah, or like Bethlehem or Jerusalem might have special sites that have a magical property. Our Lady of Zaytun, right? It appeared for like 20 years, many nights per week. Our Lady of Zaytun appeared in Egypt at a place that Joseph and Mary stayed on their way. Now it's a hotel. I mean, if the Mother of God stayed there and stayed at the Holiday Inn in Zaytun, Egypt, why wouldn't one expect to see, the Mother of God stayed there with her baby and the second greatest saint, Joseph? Why wouldn't some like cool shit go down there? I just don't understand. And morons plus like 10 IQ points, midwits, just have the hardest time because the presuppositions have been baked in and they're really the target class of constituency for brainwash. They're like, no, but it can't. It's just very simple. There are magic items, and scienticians admit this. Practitioners of science admit it. They just admit it quietly. And then the ZOG kind of pop programming refuses to announce it loudly. But I mean, a lot of this stuff is on Wikipedia, which is sort of ZOG simpliciter.
It always kind of confuses me with the Protestants when they say that Catholics are showing too much respect to images and things of that sort. And I'm always just laughing because I'm like, I know on Christmas I'm getting cards with Jesus's picture on it. So is that thing allowed or not? Like, they allowed to have pictures of Christ?
No,
and revere them? Obviously, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect.
Most Protestants are not, strictly speaking, iconoclasts in the sense that going to have to go through some philosophy of language here. In terms of, it's an analogy to like the use mention distinction. So there's this important distinction in philosophy of language called use mention distinction, where if like why your 5-year-old loves telling on an older brother or sister that said shit, they'll say, well, like Tommy said shit because they're just mentioning the word. I said this the other day. They're not referring to the quantitative essence of the word. They're not using the word to designate the essence. They're not using this bad word. They're mentioning it. So they're not designating the quiddity. And that's what you get in trouble for is using a word. Similar here with icons. I know it's a little abstract for people that haven't studied analytic philosophy, but Protestants, most of them are not iconoclasts. They'll say this is an image because it's basically a mention. It's the visual equivalent of a mention. Our Lord was real at one point in time. He's not anywhere on earth now, not in a consecrated host. Yeah, Protestant. Special kind of retardation. But, we're basically mentioning the fact that he was alive for 33 years a couple millennia ago. That's fine. So we can have an image recalling that. The scriptures are special because they recall that fact. And we Catholics and Orthodox are with us are like, well, no, but some of the places that he touched and some of the things that he really used are now like magical items, and they in Eucharist are consecrated through the order of Melchizedek, more or less, have the power of Christ. So you can actually have Jesus on earth any place by locating anywhere there's a mass being consecrated. And it applies to the relics too, and it applies to Our Lady, things like the tilma that are not just backward looking. They're not just mentions, if you will, of the power of God. They are uses of the power of God. Sorry to extend an already very abstract metaphor, but the use-mention distinction is very real. And again, midwits and nitwits have a hard time with it. But the point is that you just have to start rewiring your brain, people, to the idea that in MTV in the 90s, everyone just thinks everything's fake. That all was proven very fake. 2016, you learned that all of these people running the world really are witches. They're literal witches, and they can they use like black magic and black masses, and they can fly and stuff. They're really, really wicked. And okay, if they're running the world with this disordered version of non-natural power, preternatural power, well, the supernatural power which created everything has to be infinitely higher, and we ought to start expecting there to be like Legend of Zelda, like red ring, blue ring, white sword, magic sword that have special properties. Just stop being a normie is what I'm trying to say. Because literally, it's what good science orients us to, points us to. There are 1/4 of a micron, 1/4 of a millionth of a millimeter images created in impossible ways using non-elemental holographic color on magic tilmas that have heartbeats and dilute, and expanding, contracting eyes, living eyes of the Virgin Mary given by heaven on magic cactus cloths almost 500 years after they appeared. And the only response is a conspiracy of silence. In summary, Our Lady's eyes bear a kind of instant picture of what actually occurred at the moment the image was unveiled in front of the bishop and other witnesses on December 9th or December 12th, 1531. It's like my Stranger Things theory, right? For some reason, we're going to find out in Stranger Things 5, the Upside Down is frozen on November 6th, 1983. Opening date. Locked in time. Well, that's what this image of Our Lady is on the tilma. The figures are not visible to the human eye except for one. That of the Spaniard, the bearded guy. He's the largest one. Nobody could have painted such tiny silhouettes. And again, I don't know why they keep saying painted, because we've already ascertained, beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's no paint. In the center of the pupils, on a much smaller scale, you can see another scene, totally independent of the first. This is an Indian family composed by woman, man, some children. They're kind of repeating this. There are other people standing behind the man. Can we go to... Well, okay, so let's go through really fast this Dr. Tonsman, who wrote a book, The Secret of the Eyes, Secret of Her Eyes, complete with details and photographs of the last studies of the eyes. And perhaps one of the most fascinating aspects concluded that Our Lady of Guadalupe not only left us her miraculous image as proof of her apparition, but some important messages which were hidden in the eyes of the image until our times, which new technologies have allowed them to be discovered when they are most necessary. In 1991, an analysis made by outstanding ophthalmologists identified normal microscopic network of veins and artery circulation in the free edge of Our Lady's eyelids and cornea. According to the ophthalmologists who examined the eyes, no painter would have been able to humanly reproduce precise microscopic details. Again, and it's not made of paint. There are some miracles attributed to the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. A few days after the miracle, on December 26, 1531, while the Indians were celebrating the swiftly completed construction of the chapel, as was their custom, playing with bows and arrows and dancing, some of the celebrants fired arrows into the air in jubilation. One of them shot an arrow and accidentally pierced the throat of an Indian who was walking with a group carrying the tilma to the hill of Tepeyac. The Indian was killed instantly when the arrow pierced his neck. The corpse was carried into the chapel and laid beneath the sacred image. The crowd prayed aloud to Our Lady of Guadalupe for a miracle. Minutes later, after having extracted the arrow right in front of the mantle, the man regained consciousness and rose completely healed. Only the scar remained visible until the day he died. Following this impressive feat, 9 million Indians converted to Christianity, the largest conversion event in the history of mankind. 9 million Indians who worshipped like Baal, sacrificed their kids, Aztecs, converted to Christianity. Spaniards and Mexicans, who are mortal enemies, embraced one another with joyous affection because they all become Christian. In 1785, a worker, while attempting to clean the glass covering the tilma, accidentally spilled a 50% nitric acid solvent on the upper right side of the tilma. It did considerable damage. During the period of 30 days, without any special treatment, the affected fabric reconstituted itself miraculously in 1785. On November 14th, 1921, a bomb, Michael Knowles mentioned this on his show, a bomb with 29 sticks of dynamite was planted by Luciano Perez, a Spanish anarchist, in a flower arrangement on the altar under the tilma, which exploded and broke the marble altar rail, the marble floor, and windows 150 meters from the explosion. But unexpectedly, neither the tilma nor the normal glass that protected the image was damaged or broken. Okay, that doesn't require a miracle. It could have just been lucky. The only damage near the tilma was a heavy brass crucifix twisted by the blast. Since 1993, the tilma is protected by a bulletproof glass in the Basilica of Guadalupe. The hilarious thing is, it was like 1993 before they really started protecting this thing with any degree of seriousness. It's like 450 years in, and it's incorruptible. On July 31st, 1997, Father Xavier Escalada, SJ, he's a Jesbian, presented to the public an extraordinary evidentiary document in a sheet of parchment which contains written records of the apparition of Our Lady of Guadalupe to Juan Diego, which occurred on 4 separate occasions in December 1531 on the hill of Tepeyac, north of central Mexico City. The parchment first came to light in 1995 and 2000, was named Codex 1548 in honor of Father Escalada, who brought it to public attention and published it in 1997. Okay, I don't know why that's a miracle. That's just cool provenance of this thing. I mean, I don't know. I said I'd take some questions. If you guys are interested in this, remember, I've had on my friends Monique and Joseph a couple times on this channel. They know the equally astounding story of Juan Diego and the flower land, which was the mythology of these 9 million converts. That it's like the flower. What's it called? Flowerland was mythology that they held that Our Lady seemed to use to help convert them. And it's this whole untold part of the conversion event there at Guadalupe. But I'm focusing on the relic today. Or maybe I'll have, Monique and Joseph back on soon. I think people are just mainly astounded by the fact that this is so magical and yet so scientifically verifiable. All the dozens and scores of scientists that have looked at it are just like, yeah. It's like holding something in your hand that shouldn't be able to exist according to the modern Cartesian scientific categories. The modern scientific Cartesian categories that have no formal or final causation are just like, well, I'm holding something that has color, but the color is not attributable to any element. How is this color existing? It's like a rainbow that exists just, with wave properties, not particle properties, but we can explain a rainbow. It goes away when the humidity conditions of the air after a rain event go away. This just always exists above the cactus cloth, which itself is miraculous. And then the eyes are alive and they reflect the bishop, whose eyes in the reflection reflect other things. And it's like a quarter of a millionth of an inch. It's just ridiculous to try to rebut it. Were you going to say something, Steph?
I just wanted to point everybody to the document that you were reading from.
Oh, yeah.
Miraculous Image of Our Lady of Guadalupe, and it's information obtained from Infallible Catholic. It's a PDF. I did put the link in chat, and I'll also put it in the description to this video if you are watching it later.
That's as condensed as we could make the OLG Telma. It's really one of a kind. And there's just so much that's astounding about it that I don't know. I don't know how else to conclude other than if you're a baptized Catholic who wasn't confirmed, go get confirmed today. It's all real. Like my friend MK is always saying, it's all real. We fell, pretty much all of us who grew up in Catholic schools in the 80s, 90s, 2000, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. In the post-conciliar era of our church, which is still going strong, the enemies kind of flooded the gates, Trojan horse through the Vatican II. We don't know exactly how to interpret hermeneutically Vatican II or most of the post-conciliar popes, really all of the post-conciliar popes, culminating with Francis. The way they brainwashed us, lex orandi, lex credendi, it has to do with the fact that people don't really grow up believing any of it because of the way that we pray and the new mass and the changes wrought to the church over the last decades. It's kind of a LARP to pretend you believe in it unless you go back and you go to the Latin Mass and you really take an in-depth look at the relics. You really take an in-depth look at the messages of the real Marian apparitions, beginning usually with Fatima and Akita, but Guadalupe, they're the older ones as well. Guadalupe, Lourdes, Zatoun, there's so many. And then you realize, oh, it's all real. And I shouldn't be surprised that God-man is the second person of the Trinity, matter and form united in the hypostatic union, because there are still even things like this amazing tilma of Guadalupe that are just magic items with magic properties. We're not supposed to be challenged in this fundamentally like secular left or Protestant way. You're not supposed to be like, well, I believe the Bible, but now I have to sustain this fire test of everything that's made of matter contradicts my experience in faith. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's a lie. Get those categories out of your mind. There are there's not tons, but there are enough relics that should make this more plain to you than maybe even the Eucharist, right? Because the Eucharist, now there are Eucharistic miracles. I'm going to do a show on the Eucharistic miracle, which took place in 1996-7 in Buenos Aires. That's a really amazing one with Dr. Zugabe. That's really relevant to our times. But that's the only kind of Eucharistic stuff that is like a recips eloquiter in the same way as these relics. The Eucharist, where it normally maintains the species of bread and the accidents of bread and wine, while truly becoming body, blood, soul, divinity of Christ. Well, okay, it's the fact that ordinarily the Eucharist maintains the species of bread and wine that would enable skeptics and have for 2,000 years since, John chapter 6, verse 60. The skeptics can just laugh and be like, oh, okay, it's really Christ's body, blood, soul, divinity, but it still maintains the appearance of bread and wine. Okay. So you can't really slam dunk it in their face there. But then you get to some of the Eucharistic miracles. That's you put them in your poster, you dunk on their face. or any of these relics we're talking about. I also want to plug this Witnesses to Mystery book I was reading from for the Sudarium show on Saturday. Grzegorz Gorny and Janusz Rozikon. Really great book. It doesn't have the tilma in it. It has True Cross, Sudarium, Shroud, some of the other burial cloths. I thought it would have stuff for the tilma. What?
It's just Christ.
It's just Christ relics. They need to do one on like the tilma and other things related to Marian apparitions. I hope you've enjoyed the show. We're just at this hour. The most important thing to do is to white pill a bunch of people, not just skeptics, but even Christians, who are just so wearied by Francis having such a weird time under such an evil leader. It can happen. It's happened before. Maybe not quite so doctrinally subversive, but we've had evil popes, and people are just tired. And I just started realizing, let's show them who we are. Who we are relic-loving, hylomorphism-believing Aristotomists who really do believe that there's magic in the world and it all comes from the Holy Trinity. God bless you all. I hope this has helped you. Keep the faith. Des Volt.